David Jolly, what is Mike Johnson doing here?
Yeah, Alicia, the legislative math just simply is not there for Mike Johnson. We can fast forward to what will be either a government shutdown or a loss by Mike Johnson that'll look a lot like Kevin McCarthy's past losses. But what we don't know is, how does Mike Johnson handle that moment, right? We knew what Kevin McCarthy ultimately would do is strike a deal with Democrats. A majority of House Democrats would vote for something, and a Democratic Senate and Democratic president would sign it. We don't yet know what Mike Johnson will do, because I would suggest that even his move on Israel was an opening salvo that probably Kevin McCarthy would have considered as well, to tie aid to something, some Republican priority. The absurdity here is he actually tied it to something that's indefensible. So that is not something that will ever be considered by the Senate or signed by the president. What happens in 2 weeks? We just don't know Mike Johnson's leadership style at this point.
I mean, Eugene, I take David Jolly's point about the ability to fast forward to where this is all going, to either a government shutdown or a speaker removal 2.0, I think is where we are at this point. At some point, it will become hard to keep track. I mean, I just wonder if your sense is any different about what it is that he's trying to do here.
Yeah, I think part of it is Mike Johnson wants to make clear to the far right of his party that he's willing to fight, right? And that he's going to get his arm twisted into doing what we kind of already know is probably going to happen, like this congressman is saying. And I think something that folks should really keep in mind is the House Republican Conference is kind of an island on its own when it comes to legislating at this point. House Democrats, Senate Republicans, and the White House are all on the same page when it comes to these funding bills. A deal was struck months ago by the former Speaker of the House to get this done. And I think what I'm hearing from a lot of folks, especially those frontline Republicans in the House, is that they're just sick of the drama. They don't want to look like the party that doesn't know what it's doing. They don't want to be the party that next November is looking back and saying, we should have looked more like adults in the room. But the fundamentals have not changed in the House Republican Conference over the last few weeks. You still have a sizable portion of that conference that doesn't want to get anything done, and frankly will use any opportunity to say that basically chaos is better for them, and because it proves their own point about politics and government. I mean,
David, what Eugene just said, Republicans are saying, they're not the only ones saying that. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said this week that all of the shenanigans in the House, it's part of Republicans' goal to shut down the government. You come back to this question, though, of what it is they gain, not the 8 or however many who might actually believe that, as Eugene said, it benefits them, not Republicans, not the United States of America, not their constituents, but them, the 8 of them and their brand. How do you mitigate that if you're the rest of the Republicans who might actually want to avert this?
Yeah, Alicia, you're thinking far too rationally about this. Let me introduce you to how Republicans think. They are fine with the chaos. They are fine to shut down the government. They actually don't think there's political consequence or actually any policy consequence to that as well. That's just a tool that they believe they have. And even on some of these what we would consider hard right issues, be it issues on reproductive rights, be it issues on protecting freedom from Vladimir Putin, be it the border, whatever it might be, those issues are all actually fine for Republicans in moderate districts. At least they think they are. Understand, Mike Johnson was elevated on this agenda by everybody, not just by a few Republicans, but by everybody. They're actually okay with that agenda. What I am really watching for, I think there's two dynamics. Mike Johnson's runway is as short as Kevin McCarthy's was, but Kevin McCarthy was at the end of his runway entering this CR. Mike Johnson's is at the beginning. He's got room to lose a few battles and still be okay with Republicans. To me, it comes down to Ukraine. The Republican conference can't get their act together on providing aid to Ukraine, but we know Mike Johnson promised Senate Republicans that the House would likely deliver that. How does he do that? And what does that look like if you end up with more Democratic votes than Republican votes in the House? Mike Johnson ends up right where Kevin McCarthy is. He's just a little bit further back on the runway.